Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the BAD Online International Festival. My name is Catherine Dupelou-Menager, and I'm the festival director. I'd like to begin by acknowledging traditional owners of country throughout Australia. We recognise their continuing connection to land, to waters, and to culture, and pay our respects to elders past and present, as well as to any Indigenous people watching today. I'm talking to you from Camaragal land. For the second event in the festival, we are absolutely delighted to welcome Janet Evanovich. Janet's a prolific writer, but my heart, I think I have to say, is with Stephanie and the Stephanie Plum series. I can still remember standing in the street when a neighbour who knew I liked crime fiction said, "How could you not have read of these?" Gave me a book, gave me one for the money, and that was it. It was game on till the latest book, which is in fact Game On. And now we have a new, similarly funny and tough heroine, Gabriela Rose, who looks for missing people. Who doesn't look for missing people like Stephanie Plum did, but she looks for missing assets. I think you might have a thing about things that are missing or need to be searched for. Janet, it didn't occur to me till I thought about it, but there we are. Anyway, welcome, and we're really looking forward to this session.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
Sue Turnbull, who'll be talking to you, is Senior Professor of Communications and Media at the University of Wollongong. Now, she's been reviewing crime fiction for the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age for over 20 years, and she's been a crime fiction judge for the Ned Kelly Awards, the Davitt Awards. She's an ambassador for Sisters in Crime. And last but not least, she's the chair of BAD Sydney Crime Writers Festival, and she often brings her long years of experience and her talent to interviewing guests, as she'll do today. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine.
Now, before we start, I'd like to thank our sponsors, the City of Sydney and Create New South Wales, without whom we would simply not be here today. So we are very, very grateful to them. We have a relationship with Booktopia, and we appreciate their support. So jump on to Booktopia and buy The Recovery Agent, and indeed all of Janet's books. You'll have a lot of fun. Finally, I'd like to welcome all the members of the BAD community who are joining us today. Those who are joining us from libraries in particular, that's very exciting. And I think for the second time, we are having people joining us from Brisbane Library. So that's great to be going interstate. Welcome, everyone. Now, briefly, what we're doing is I'm going to disappear shortly and hand over to Sue, who will talk to Janet. After about 50 to 55, 50-ish minutes, Sue will ask the questions which readers have sent in beforehand. And then a couple of minutes before the end, I will pop back on and say goodbye and thank you to everyone. But now over to Sue.
Thank you very much, Catherine. And indeed, I'm delighted to be talking to you, Janet. I know it's evening for you, it's morning here for us. And we're going to be talking about your most recent book, The Recovery Agent. And I just wanted to tell you about my experience of reading this, because I started to read it in a waiting room being prepped for spinal surgery, right? So it quite, ominous moment, and I was a little bit fearful, and I read the first 100 pages before they wheeled me into the operating theatre. And as they're wheeling me in, I'm chuckling, and they're saying, "Why are you laughing?" And I said, "I'm just reading the funniest book." And I completed it the day after, while I was still on the opioids and probably quite out of it, but it was just such a romp that it all made sense. I think somehow kind of hallucinating a bit made it even more exciting. So your book is the perfect book for reading in, I would say, circumstances that are out of the ordinary, but it's of course pleasurable in any case. But congratulations on writing such a wonderfully enjoyable and compelling book. It's a total romp. And as I was reading it, I kept thinking, oh, it's Indiana Jones meets Romancing the Stone, which was that movie with Michael Douglas and Catherine Kathleen Turner a long time ago. There's bits of Pirates of the Caribbean, there's bits of Lara Croft, and there's also mentions of Scrooge McDuck, which was puzzling to me because I don't know a lot about Scrooge McDuck. So tell us how this new series emerged. What was the impetus for moving in this direction with this character, Gabriela Rose, and a bit more about Scrooge McDuck?
Well, first of all, Scrooge McDuck, because when I was a kid, I was not a big reader. I read comic books, and one of my favorite comic books was Scrooge McDuck. And I liked him because he was always going off on adventures with his nephew, Donald, and Huey, Dewey, and Louie, these three little ducks. And they would go to the moon, and they would go to the Amazon, and they would go to the Klondike. And it just started my love for the adventure story. And I think, from there, it goes to Star Wars and to Indiana Jones and Romancing the Stone and all of these things that take place in exotic locations and have wonderful heroes and heroines. If they aren't ducks, they're actually real people. And so this has been like, an important influence in my life. And when it came to writing the book, with Gabriela Jones, I mean, it's a project that I've wanted to do for a long time. I love Stephanie Plum, but I mean, I have been with this poor woman for 29 books now, and every now and then you just feel like getting out of the little closet that's Trenton, New Jersey, and moving on and going into I mean, what was fun about this book, finally having, I've started a lot of miniseries and I write 2 or 3 books, and then I kind of go back to Plum. And it's nice to have that diversion, to get out of Stephanie's head into another protagonist's mind. I always think it makes it much better for me when I go back to writing a Plum. But I've never had the opportunity to do a real Scrooge McDuck book that just took place on all of these exciting exotic locations. And this book goes all over the place. It's in South America, it's in the islands, it's in New York, it's in California. And it gave me an opportunity into moving into this just very expansive world with this woman. And it also allowed me to create a heroine that was very different from Stephanie Plum. She's almost, in many ways, the exact opposite of Stephanie Plum, because she's very good at what she does. She can cook. She's a gourmet cook. She is very good at martial arts. She actually likes guns. She likes travel. She has a very good sense of herself. She's a very strong woman. I think Plum is a very strong woman as well, but in an entirely different way. And so it was just a great excursion for me. And the more I wrote this book, the more I liked it. I especially liked the guy in it, because one of my favorite heroes comes from the Wicked series. And every now and then I bring him into the Plums just because I miss him. And I mean, the thing is, about these co-authored books and the Wicked series is that I get into them and I love them. And then I just run out of time. I just, I can't clone myself. I can't, I just can't do it all. So we've sort of found a way now that we can write it into my schedule, because I really would like to do more of the Gabriela Rose books. So we finally got a hold of it. So I think I could take on this second series and do both of them. But the hero in the Wicked series, Diesel, is really a lot like the guy in this book. He has a lot of Diesel in him. He's got kind of this big, scruffy guy that I sort of modeled after Thor Ragnarok. And some of my other favorite, movie and television character men. So it was a lot of fun to write. I can't wait to get back and write another one of them.
Yeah, well, Rafer is great fun. I rather like the fact that he's always prepared for anything. He in his pockets you're going to find grenades and condoms just in case.
Just in case, yeah.
Be prepared.
Yes, yeah.
Well, you've often talked in the past about Stephanie and her relationship to Trenton, New Jersey, and your background in Trenton, New Jersey, and so there's potential kind of you were writing at that point from something that you knew, but I'm wondering if you had to acquire a whole new skill set, and if you had to do travel to write this book, because as you said, you take us to South America, there's proficiency in guns. Have you had to have all sorts of exciting adventures yourself in order to get on top of these things?
Well, that was the plan. I thought, okay, I made up my little outline, and we're going to they're going after the lost treasure of Lima. They start out in St. Vincent, and then in the Barbados, and then they go to South America, the mountains. They're out in and so that was the plan. And then I started writing this, and COVID hit, and I did everything by Google. It was, because you couldn't travel. So the next book, I have it all outlined, of all the places that I want to go that I didn't get a chance to go in this book. But there'll be new places. I think the next book probably will take place maybe more in Asia and Europe. The London will play a part in it, and maybe Switzerland. And so unless another disaster hits, I plan on doing some hit the ground running with research. But for this book, it was all Google, and it's pretty amazing what you can do. The maps that you can pull up on Google Earth are astonishing. You can see terrain, you can see where the roads are, you can. So, and at some point I was like, I have to stop this, because I'm not going to bring this book in on time. Because I'm so enthralled with Google Maps. I'm spending all of my time reading about, Peru. And so, yeah, but no, I didn't get to do a lot of travel for this book.
I'm so glad that you said that, because in fact, I suspect that the only thing that's missing from here is a map, because there's treasure, and there's actually there's the trip to South America, and I would love to know there's a river, and there's the canyons that you go through, and then of course there's the actual hunt for treasure on an island. I just have this sense that these books would really benefit and be, because I've always loved maps, from Winnie the Pooh and the 100 Acres Wood all the way through. I love maps in books, and particularly in crime books, and I just think this would be even more fun with a map at the front.
I think so too. And, in the hardcover, we do have, a map, but it's not real. It's a fake map. But I think, I think that would be a great idea. Maybe we can squeeze it into the next book. We'll have to.
I don't mind fictional maps. I like fictional maps as well. It's just that thing of following the action and then turning back to the map, and then with your finger going. It's that relationship between the imagination and a sense of place, which I think is so exciting. I just wanted to come to the characters, because you've got Gabriela and you've got Rafer. So you've given us another wonderful relationship, which is what I call thirsty, unresolved sexual tension, which is a theme all the way through the Plum books, because occasionally the sexual tension does get resolved, but she's never going to quite settle between the men in her life. And you've given us Gabriela and Rafer, and that promise of their relationship, because they've known each other forever. Tell us a bit about their relationship. And I suppose it's to me how you've segued from being a romance writer to a crime and now an adventure story writer, and what you've learned from that romance writing that you've brought through to these books so successfully.
Well, one of the things is that I've learned, while I was writing, but also from my own experience with television and movies, is that it's all about the chase. That's the fun of it. And once the chase is over, and it loses something. And so that unresolved sexual tension is very important. It was like, I don't know, do you remember Moonlighting?
I do indeed.
Yeah, with Maddie and Dave.
Yes.
And it was like, I mean, I was glued to my television set. And then when they finally did it, I was like, it was done. I don't know, it lost something. And that was a lesson learned, you know. So with the Plum series, that is flat out the most difficult part of that book, is keeping that sexual tension going. I mean, it's so unrealistic. These are, you know, sexy adult people, and they've been going at it for a long time. Although the world of Plum is not the same as, you know, the world that we live in. As you can see, Stephanie and I just never age. You know, we just always stay the same, especially with, you know, good lighting and makeup. But so with this book, when I went into Gabriela Rose, I wanted to find a way that I could keep these two people together and apart. And as it turns out, they love each other and they hate each other. They have been together most of their lives from kindergarten on. They were always best friends. They were girlfriend, boyfriend in high school. They were girlfriend, boyfriend, lovers in college. Of course, they got married. And if they had been married any longer, they would have killed each other, because these two people can't get along. They're best friends. They like each other, but they can't agree on one single thing. They bicker and argue the whole time. And so now in this series, they really are kind of forced together, because she's a treasure hunter, but he has the maps, and he's not letting the maps go. And so they're locked into this relationship, this kind of professional relationship with each other, trying to find their way. I mean, obviously there's still a sexual attraction there, but there also is a personality issue that they can't seem to resolve. So, and you know, it was some of the fun of writing this first book, because you know, I had that to deal with. And so I could have them screaming at each other. I could have them, you know, say, you go first. There's a big boulder going to come down, rolling over and crush all of us. So if you want to go first, you can.
Yeah, no, I love that particular scene, because the other thing, of course, that you have in the Plum books is that extraordinary cast of extras. You know, Stephanie's at the center, but there are all these characters, Grandma Mazur and Lula, and all these characters who come in with their bit parts. Now, by making Gabriela an adventurer who's going places, you don't have that same kind of opportunity, or do you? She's only got one person on staff. I'm just wondering if, because you do have characters in the new book, there's the two guides in South America, and there's the two guys who help on the island, who have that wit and that comedy interaction. So I'm just wondering how you're going to play that out in the Gabriela Rose series, if you're going to keep that.
Well, when I created Plum a long time ago, one of the things that I was looking at was television started to come out with ensemble comedies, sitcoms. Barney Miller was one of the first. And I thought, how clever is this? Because, you know, I was looking at Sue Grafton, and she had, you know, poor Kinsey hanging out there all by herself with her, you know, cutting her hair with her nail scissors. And I couldn't see myself, you know, maintaining this. And so I looked at shows like Barney Miller, and even today, when you look at shows, you know, more modern shows like Seinfeld, it's this ensemble comedy, which is really what the Plum series is. When I created Gabriela, the first book certainly doesn't show that, because it's not characters all together in one room all the time, sort of like Plum and Seinfeld. Certainly it's always going to be Gabriela and Rafer, but there will be other secondary characters like the guys in this book who help her out in South America and on the island. But she does have her family back in Schoon, North Carolina. She has her mom and her dad, and she has her grandmother, because I always have to have a grandmother. And then she has this special character named Annie, who's a ghost. And we don't see a lot of Annie, and we're not even sure she really exists. But it is a fun element that I bring into the stories, and that, you know, probably will stay there. And so depending on the storyline, there will be, you know, more or less of her family in Scone. And then, you know, I like to see the way things develop. Lula in the Plum series was never intentioned to go on with the series. She was a hoe. She was a hooker in the first book. And there was just something about Lula that when I sat down to write the second book, she wasn't in it. And I couldn't get rid of her. I just kept thinking about the potential that I had with Lula. And so I brought Lula in, and she just grew with every book. And one of my big problems now is that Lula kind of tends to take over the story if I'm not careful and watch out for her. So I imagine that with this new series, you know, things like this might turn out. Stephanie has an office manager in New York. She has a condo in New York and a little office in New York, and she has an office manager there. And we see her a little bit in this book. So it gives me a lot of freedom to bring characters in and to enlarge them if I want to, or to make them go away. So I think it'll be a little different from Plum, but, you know, in some ways it'll be like the Plum as well.
I just wanted to stay with Lula for just a moment, because I heard a wonderful story that you told about an editor who objected. They didn't want the word hoe in your book. They wanted to take that out, and how you got around that, because I think it's a brilliant insight into the what happens with a book and the editing process.
Yeah, well, you know, this was during strange times, because I changed publishers, and I had this brand new editor who was being very protective of me, and very a fantastic editor. I was very lucky to get this man. But it was also during a time when we were so woke in this country, and militantly woke. And all of a sudden, this was all of this stuff going on with cancel culture and being politically correct, and then morphing into the woke world. And so he not being as familiar with the series as he might have been, he looked at Lula, and so you know, because she's kind of a caricature. I mean, she is, but she's been this person for 30 years, and she's, you know, one of the favorite people in the book. And the thing about Lula is the most positive character in the series, probably. You cannot defeat Lula. Lula is more of everything. She bounces back. She goes from one thing to the next. There's always a lot of growth in Lula. And so, but he said, oh, you know, she can't be a hoe. I mean, that's just not, you know, politically correct. That's insensitive. And so I was like, yeah, but she likes being a hoe. She's very proud because she was the best hoe ever. You know, she gave everybody their money's worth. She was a great hoe. And he was like, you know, sort of didn't get that. No, I'm afraid they're going to come after you. So then we decided that this was actually a good thing, because I work with my daughter a lot. So we sat down and we thought of all of these great things that she could be instead of a hoe, like an erectile engineer. And we had this whole list of this stuff. And so it turned out, you know, that like, so now I'm given we're going back, because the fans started saying things like, somebody else is writing these books because Lula's not a hoe anymore. And so we decided that we would allow her to go back to being a hoe. But now I kind of miss, you know, that she's not an erectile engineer. So we're combining them a little bit.
Because these were great euphemisms, and I can only imagine the amount of fun that you must have had coming up with those. And yes, I had actually thought about that sitcom element in these books, and how you were going to make those work, because one of my favorite sitcoms growing up, and I'm sure that you as well, was Lucy. I love Lucy.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think what people forget about Lucy was that she was an extraordinary athlete, and this is where I kind of want to go, because you've given Gabriela the capacity, all these skills and all this strength. She's a physical action woman, and I think this is actually an incredibly smart move at this time, because female action figures are emerging everywhere. So she's not just Lara Croft, she's more than that. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about, you know, this moment and bringing in your female action heroine.
Yeah, well, I love action movies, and I'm a comic book person. So, I've wanted, Stephanie Plum, when I created Plum, I was looking at myself, because I'm basically inept at everything. It's a good thing I learned how to make money writing books, because I'm an abject failure at everything else. I don't swim because I don't like to get wet, and I don't, and then you have to get into a bathing suit and look at yourself, and that's, never a happy moment. And so, I don't like guns. I had never shot a gun. I'm not, I've never done self-defense. I don't think of myself as being especially brave. Stephanie Plum certainly is braver than I am. So when I created Plum, I put a lot of myself in there, because I knew I wanted to stay with a character. Wasn't sure I want to stay with that character for 30 years, but here we are. And I thought, if I model her a little bit after myself, I'll be able to keep going with it. So, sorry, I'm in Florida. I'm getting like palm dust. So that was part of the creation of Plum. She certainly isn't me, but I know how she thinks, and I know how she reacts. When I created Gabriela, I wanted some woman who was more accomplished than me. I wanted her to be the woman that I always wanted to be. I wanted her to be this brave, daredevil. I can do anything. I'm not afraid to. I've got a centipede crawling on me. Flick it off. That I wanted to be that kind of person, instead of the person that I am that runs screaming out of the room looking for a man. There's a spider. So so that was, so I started looking at all of these characters that I love in other places, because I relate more to television and movies than I do to books. When I read books, I sort of can't get out of the book, but when I watch television and movies, it's sort of it's a different, less demanding experience. Yeah. And so I wanted to be Indiana Jones. I wanted to be Thor. I wanted to be the librarian in the Mummy movie.
Oh yeah. I can't remember it, but yes.
Yeah. Like, she was great, right? Here was this woman in spectator shoes, when she was a librarian, and she had guts, right? She would, she just went and did everything. National Treasure, great adventure movie, just, moves fast and filled with action. And I was looking at all of these things when I created the series, and when I created Gabriela. I think I probably looked more towards men than I did towards female characters, because we have more examples of action figures in men. Yeah. And so I wanted to, squash Nicolas Cage into Gabriela.
Actually, the more I thought about it, the more I wondered that I actually think this book, on this series, would make fantastic graphic novels. I wonder if you ever moved in the direction of a graphic novel, because you've done so many different things and so many different series, and I know you actually had a background in art. So I'm suggesting that this might be a possible new direction, because I think these would be great, like Tintin, only better. Yeah,
well, we actually did a graphic novel because my daughter and I, are graphic novel people. Besides comics, we read the bigger graphic novels and manga, and so we did a 2-book graphic novel, Troublemaker, which was fantastic. We did it with Dark Horse Comics, and I think it turned out amazing. But it is a difficult, complicated experience. You know, it's easy to write the script for it, but then you need inkers and colorists and artists,
Yeah.
and it's huge. It's just a huge, complicated process. So, but you're right. I think this would we should probably get in touch with Dark Horse again and see if they're interested, because I loved seeing it out there. It's one of my favorite projects that Alex and I did together, is the Troublemaker graphic novel.
I'm going to track that down, because I also am coming to, there are some actually wonderful crime graphic novels emerging at the moment. So I'll definitely go and hunt that one down. You mentioned that it was easy to get the script. So I actually do want to talk a little bit about the craft of writing, because you make it look so easy, but of course, to make it look easy is very, very hard work. And you know, now you're one of the most successful crime novelists in the world, I would say, but it wasn't always so. You did have a struggle to get published, and I think it's very reassuring for people to hear that even the most successful people had a struggle. So tell us a bit about your journey to getting published as a writer.
Yeah, I decided that I was a stay-at-home mom with an art background, and a painter, and painter wasn't working for me anymore. I just didn't find it satisfying. I was breaking out from the pigment, and I had little kids who were always getting into the paint. And so I decided, I realized that I was always telling stories about the paintings that I was doing. So I thought I would be a story writer. And my goal was that I would write a book and sell it to the movies, and then I'd be rich and famous. And, you know, and I finally am, but it took me 25 years. So I started writing. I didn't know anything about writing. I didn't know any writers. I had no connections. And I just, you know, stumbled along, and I started writing some very weird things because of my art background, and that didn't work. And finally, I got around to writing romance novels, because that was what I was reading at the time. I was a young wife and mother. And that was finally where I first got published. But it took me 10 years. I mean, I sent manuscripts out for 10 years before somebody picked me up. And I had this huge packing crate of rejections. I mean, we're not talking shoebox, we're talking massive cardboard box of rejections. I had a rejection that was written in lipstick on a bar napkin from an agent. It was not a good time.
But I also understand that you're a very disciplined writer. I mean, I came across the information that you get up at 5:30 every morning, which is just astonishing to me. I'm struggling these days to sort of surface at the moment, because winter's coming in, but you get up at 5:30 every morning and you're at your desk. I just find that, of course, explains how you manage to be so prolific, because you are so very, very disciplined. But how do you maintain that? How do you maintain that discipline?
Wine helps. You know, and then they pay me a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I love entertaining. I love hearing from the readers. You know, with COVID, I haven't been able to go out on book tour. We do these video things, which I've actually come to think, you know, serve a real purpose. You can reach a lot of people that, but I like my job. I think it's worthy, because I'm the happy writer. I mean, somebody has to help people to be happy. I'm never going to be invited on Oprah, you know, because I don't write the cathartic book. I just want to make people smile and show them that there are, you know, some imperfect but good people out there. And so it's very motivating. And I go to bed at about 10 o'clock at night, and I go to bed with a steno pad. And before I fall asleep, I write in the steno pad about what I accomplished during the day. And then I project where I'm going the next day, because I start out with an outline, but it's a pretty sketchy outline. It's not pages and pages of detail. I do the pages and pages of detail as I'm writing, you know, the night before, or maybe 2 or 3 nights before, if I'm going to have, you know, a long sequence of events. And so, you know, this is my process. So when I wake up in the morning, I've got a lot of stuff there. It's something has happened in my head overnight, you know, that I know where I'm going in the morning. And that's just the best time for me, because I'm up at 5:30 and the house is quiet and it's daybreak, which is always a very exciting time. And I get my little dog and I get my cup of coffee and I go into my office, and it's just the best time. I get to go into this other world, this, you know, this world of Stephanie, or the world of Gabriela, or the world of the Wicked people. And I have ideas, you know, I want to get all of this down. I want to be with these people, see what they're going to be doing. And then by about lunchtime, I'm done. I haven't got a thought in my head. Like, you know, and there's nothing left. And so for the rest of the day, I stick with it. I put in a very long writing day, because I'm actually a very slow writer. I mean, I do a lot of thinking, and then I write 3 sentences, and then I do a lot of thinking and a lot of scribbling, and I write another paragraph maybe. So, you know, so I break for lunch, and after lunch I go back and I do more writing, but a lot of that is editing, because my process has changed over the years as my skill set has improved. So when I'm done with the book, I'm pretty much done with the book. I mean, it goes to my family for first edit, and then it goes into my publisher for their edit, and we work with it a little bit, but I don't do a lot of versions.
No.
So the afternoon is spent editing, you know, pretty much what I've written in the morning.
I have I now have this lovely image of you going into your office at 5:30. And as I was reading your book, you know, and I'm chuckling and laughing, I can only imagine that you make yourself laugh when you're writing. Do you laugh as you're writing when your characters come out with things? Or is it so hard to get that laugh in place? You know, like the comedian has to work very, very hard to get the laugh. Or do you laugh as you're doing it?
Yeah, no, I don't usually laugh. Sometimes I think I'm very clever, though. But I don't laugh. Well, you're absolutely right, because I'm not spontaneously funny. Okay, maybe if I have 2 glasses of wine, I am, but ordinarily, no. I mean, it takes me a while to be funny. I have funny thoughts, but to put them just right, to have the timing, you know, because timing is so critical, to have them be appropriate, and that takes some time. That's the thought process. And I'll write a sentence over 5, 6 times, rearranging things and moving things around, which is, thank God for computers. You know, I started writing on a typewriter, and I would not be able to write the same kind of book today if I was still writing on a typewriter.
Yeah.
Remember whiteout? And, you know,
I do. I wrote my PhD thesis on a typewriter. So yes, I remember.
Yeah. And so, but, you know, writing is hard. It is really hard. And I think I work very hard so that my reader doesn't have to work hard. I don't think readers should have to work hard to get through a book. I think they should just be able to fly through the book. I don't use words that I think my readers don't know. Maybe once in a while, if it's something exotic. I work really hard and spend a lot of time on transition. I think that transition is the thing that absolutely makes a difference in the book, moving the reader from one place to the next, from one time setting to the next. Making that transition seamless is very difficult, and I spend a lot of time at that.
You're also very responsive to your fans. You're devoted to your fans and responsive to your fans. I mean, you mentioned that you go on book tours, but I don't think you do many writers' festival events. Book tours are probably how you connect with your fans and you get feedback. Do you ever get feedback where they tell you that they want you to change things and you follow up on that? I mean, how does that relationship work?
Yeah, no, I get, when I started, I used to go to a lot of festivals. And I would still like to. It's just you have to somehow manage to get all this into your schedule, and to make it work. And I mean, that's the real problem, especially if I'm doing 2 books a year. Then the amount of time that I have for travel is limited. But the fan relationship is really important. Mostly when I go out on book tour, I don't get a lot of, the fan mail that I get will have suggestions, and I like Ranger, or I like Joe, and when are they going to get married and all that kind of stuff. And you listen, you pay attention to it, but you don't really let it influence where you're going. But when I'm on book tour, what I do get a lot of is that people that really need to see me, because I write the happy book, and there are women who have had breast cancer, and there are people who've lost spouses and children. There are people who are getting on in years, and and a lot of these people just want to see me and say, you made me laugh at a time when I didn't think I would ever laugh again. And they come up to the desk, and they get there, and they just burst into tears, and I mean, and it's, and that's what keeps you going, because you know that you're making a difference. You're doing something important. If it's just for 3 people, I mean, it's such an amazing experience to have someone say that to you. I mean, it's like, I get choked up just thinking about it, that I could do that for someone. But so when I'm on book tour, I get a lot of that. I get a lot of families coming, 3 generations, husbands and wives and kids and grandmothers, and they all read the book, and they make it an event, and they all come out to the book signing. And and you get to see where your books are going, and they're always just very happy to be there, and we love your books. And and then they always have to comment on either they're Joe people or they're Ranger people. And but that's more of what I get. I don't read fan fiction. When people send me their stories, I pass them on to other people. I don't read them, because I don't want to be influenced by any of that.
No, I can understand that. But how wonderful to have that kind of relationship with your fans, and to get that kind of response. I was choking up a bit there too. Okay, well, this is actually a really lovely segue into some questions that we do have from the audience, and I've got 3 here. So the first one is, you seem to love writing series rather than standalone novels. What is it about a series that makes your writing pulse race?
I like staying with the character. I like getting to know the character. And, it started with the romances, because I was writing these little romance novels. They were short little books. They were category romance. And I wasn't making a lot of money from them, and we needed money. I was looking at college tuition coming up for my kids. And so I was doing 3, 4 books a year, and I couldn't keep track of who I was writing about. After a while, I used to put sticky notes up on my computer screen so I could remember the heroine's name, because I was moving along so fast. And I decided, that when I moved into crime fiction, that I wanted to do a series. I wanted to stay with that character. I don't know if I was really planning on staying with that character for 30 years, but and I still enjoy that. And one of the frustrating parts comes from the series that I've started and have not been able to stay with, like Wicked.
Yeah.
I loved the Wicked series. I loved the Wicked characters. I loved Diesel and his cousin, Wolf. And I can't seem to get back to them. You know, I just can't fit all of it into my schedule. So, but I like the continuity.
Mm.
I don't know, you know, I've never written a standalone since romance. So I guess that could be fun. Although it seems like a lot of work, right? Because you're always starting from the beginning, doing all this new research. And what I found out with the Plum series was when I started Plum, I did a lot of research. I hung out with bounty hunters and bail bondsmen and cops. And I spent a lot of time doing that. I learned how to shoot, you know, I was carrying pepper spray, you know, tried getting sprayed with it. And what is this like and all that kind of stuff. But then after, you know, by like about the third book, what I was realizing is that I had this background and it was useful, but what my readers really cared about were the characters.
Yeah.
And so, so I really do very little research for the Plum series anymore. If I do, it's in relationship to the storyline.
Yeah.
So when you're doing standalones, especially if it's as a thriller writer and you've got all these locations, you know, well, we'll see with Gabriela, because even though it's continuing character, they really are, you know, more of a standalone book because of
Yes, because of the adventures you're going to take her on, which we're looking forward to. The next question is, will we see Stephanie again? I have an unfeminist longing to know if she marries Morelli.
Oh, and you don't expect me to tell you, do you? Yeah, Stephanie will be back in November. Going Rogue is the November book.
Oh, right. Okay, because I've got this one, which is 28. So is Going Rogue 29?
Yes.
Excellent. And Diesel makes an appearance in this one, though, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. Yes. I bring, you know, I think I brought him in. Well, first of all, he started in the Plum books. I did these little holiday books.
Yes.
And they were sort of weird because Diesel was in them and he was this sort of magical guy. And I had to eliminate all the other men in her life. And I think I did 3 or 4 of those. And then what I really wanted to do was the Wicked series with Diesel, but my publisher was afraid nobody would buy a book that wasn't a Plum. So I had to start out with Stephanie and Diesel and then move into him. And then I only got to do a few of the Wicked stories with Diesel, but I liked him so much that every now and then I squish him into Plum. And yeah, so he makes an appearance every now and then, but now he's morphed into Rafer. So
yes. No, I love the way your world connects up, though. I do like these characters who wander in from one book to another. Okay, last question, which we've sort of touched on, but maybe you can have another go at this. Who are your female role models, heroines in life and in literature? You write tough women, so who inspires you?
You know, that's difficult because I'm not necessarily inspired by women.
Your grandmother?
There is the librarian.
Yes.
You know. The Valkyrie in Thor. What was her name? You know, the one that I love this. I can't think of her name right now. I can see her so clearly, but it opens up and she's on her spaceship and she's all dressed in, you know, like the black suit, and she walks down the ramp and she's drinking and she falls off the ramp into this garbage heap, and she gets up and she shoots up all the bad guys, you know, that are standing around. And I'm like, that's my kind of heroine, you know. Oh my God, I can't believe I can't think of her name, but
neither can I, sorry.
Doesn't walk, she swaggers. But in Thor Ragnarok, she's a Valkyrie, she's a fallen Valkyrie.
Yes.
And she plays a large role in that.
It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because you come back to that kind of comic book fantasy world, because I'm thinking, you know, Wonder Woman in the 1940s as a comic book character was very influential for me growing up in the 50s was actually realizing that there could be a female comic book hero.
Yeah. Oh, I found it. It's Brunhilde.
Brunhilde, there you go.
Yes, the Asgardian Valkyrie. And and here's another. I made a list of these at some time because it's such a difficult question. Moana. Okay, I like Moana. Yeah, and Evelyn, the woman is named Evelyn in The Mummy. So yeah.
There you go. We've got them now. Well,
I have some female here. Yes.
Janet, it's been an absolute joy talking to you. Thank you so much. I'm going to pass back to Catherine now to close proceedings, but thank you so much for sharing. Such a pleasure. Thank you.
It's been fun.
Absolutely. That was really good. It was entertaining, but it was also very enlightening. And there were laughs as well. I think anybody who's ever wanted to write will take great heart from the packing case of rejection slips, not just a shoebox, but a whole box of them. And then, 25 years later, here you are. And I must say, wine helps as a writing tip is unusual. Not heard that one before. Maybe we should say, should it be rosé or red or white? But anyway, we'll just take heart from that. But it was just amazing to hear about your professionalism. I mean, this is a job. Your writing is a job, and that's how you treat it. And you feel a great responsibility, I think is the word, to your readers, to give them what you give them, not what anybody else gives them. I think that's fantastic. And yeah, I nearly teared up too when you're talking about your fans who come along and share their lives and just tell you what a difference you've made, which must be such a moving and a fantastic thing to be able to achieve. So thank you for that. And if anybody doesn't yet have their copy of The Recovery Agent or any of the Stephanie Plums or any of anything really by Janet, just go to Booktopia and they will have it for you. So next week we stay in the US, actually. We've been in the US, this is our third visit to the US in this festival. We'll be talking to bestseller Harlan Coben with his fantastic new book, forgotten its name, fantastic new book, The Match, that's right. A really interesting insight into a lot of things that are happening in contemporary society, as of course all crime fiction always does. So anyone can go to badsydney.com to book their tickets. Now, I hope you've all enjoyed this event as much as I have. Thank you again to Janet, and thank you to Sue. And we hope to see you maybe in the flesh in Australia one day when you can travel again.
I would love that. And I choose my wine by the screw cap.
You mean the color or the only screw cap wines?
Yeah, I like, you don't have to have a cork anymore.
I know.
I mean, when I need a glass of wine, I need it now.
Yeah, you don't want to be.
Yes, I like the screw cap.
Yeah, no, I must say, at first I thought they were terrible. Now I'm a bit like you. Immediate access is what matters.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. Well, look, thank you so much. And to our audience, see you next week. Bye-bye, Janet. Bye-bye, Sue.